Matt Schaff and Shane Hallam of DraftSharks.com here to talk some scouting combine reactions and how they should impact your Dynasty rookie rankings going forward. Shane, before we get to specific players, let's talk a little process here. As the combine is going every year, we all race to label winners and losers from the guys working out. But I think it's at least as important to really define what a winner or a loser is at this stage. It shouldn't just be this guy tested great, he's a winner. This guy tested poorly, he's a loser, because there's a lot more context than that. I know that you are an avid film watcher, so you know these players very well before we even get to Indy. What are you looking for at the combine? What makes certain guys winners or losers in your view?
I think the big thing is performance against expectations. Like you said, sometimes we're very quick to say, oh, this guy ran really faster or was really athletic. Well, if we knew he was really athletic, then it doesn't really help. Someone like Travion Henderson, who we knew was going to run pretty fast. He ran a 4.43. It's about what I expected. He's not moving up tremendously. I like to, before the combine, kind of jot down for all the skill guys what I think they'll run in the 40 is at least something I feel like I can predict, and then compare that against the results. Someone like Damian Martinez from Miami ran a 4.51. That was about 0.1 better than I thought he would be, right? So his performance was much better than expectation. And I think you want to look at the full package too, not just the 40. I think sometimes we get honed in on that, but I like to use a relative athletic score, or RAS, by Kentley Platt. And so when I talk about percentiles for the broad jump or the vertical leap for explosion or 3-cone drill and short shuttle for agility, those are important too. Teams want certain thresholds, everything from hand size. 9 inches for receivers for some teams have that threshold. Some want, running backs be under 7 for a 3-cone drill. Certain teams care more than others. The Colts, the Packers, the Steelers, for example. For me, the king is draft capital. That's what, winning or losing the combine. If it's improving a player's draft capital because they perform better than expectations, then I think that helps. And I'll also say, I think the drills are important. So it's not just the numbers. We'll get into that a little bit. But I think it's important to look at the receivers running the route tree or running backs catching the football. Those things are important too. And we can't just get locked in on only numbers.
Yeah, so a good roundup. I mean, we're looking for basically either confirmation of what we thought on a guy or reason to go back and recheck. Maybe that's this guy tested faster than I thought, so maybe I'll check and see if I was wrong on him, or maybe he's more athletic than I gave him credit for. Or, he's slower than I thought, and maybe he's not going to produce in the NFL the way that he did in college because all of the athletes are going to be better. So maybe I need to rethink this. I think one thing that probably we all, including the league, get wrong is if a guy tests really well, you might get excited, but that could be a red flag if a guy is an above average athlete, even versus other top level athletes, and yet he did not produce in college. That could be a reason to worry about him actually converting that athleticism into NFL production. So, we hit that base now. We're going to get into the specific players. We're going to hit 3 winners and 3 losers from this year's combine. And then we're going to look at some of the biggest movers in our Dynasty rookie rankings, which have been live on DraftSharks.com since January. Already gotten a couple of updates. You can also find rookie mock drafts for both 1 quarterback and Superflex formats on DraftSharks.com. Now, you're going to want to check those out quickly, though, to see where we stood on these players before the combine, because we've got updates on these coming now that we're getting more info on these players. And now that the rest of us Draft Sharks are inching a tiny bit closer to Shane in terms of knowing these players. Speaking of players, Shane, let's get right to it. The thing that people are here for. Hit me with your first winner from this year's scouting combine.
I think one of the big winners was Quinshon Judkins, running back from Ohio State, who was a player who's already kind of flirting with maybe being a top 50 pick at running back, which we in the fantasy community would love to get more running backs in. He answered, my biggest question was long speed. He ran a 4.48. I thought he was going to be more of a mid 4.5 player. I think that answers that question. And maybe even better was his 10-yard split was 1.52. To put that in perspective, that tied for second with his teammate Travion Henderson, who's considered the much more athletic, much faster running back. And that's a 94th percentile score. And he killed everything else. His vertical was 38.5, 93rd percentile. His broad was 11 feet, 99th percentile. Quinshon Judkins was a player, I think, on film, especially this year at Ohio State, that was kind of between the tackles and a little more plodding. And you're like, how athletic is he? He's super athletic, and that tells me he could be a 3-down back, and for us in fantasy can potentially be a stud and should put him squarely in the top 50 of the NFL draft.
Yeah, we'll see if he even flirts at the end of round one here. I love that you have Judkins as the top winner here because it's not a matter of a guy coming out of nowhere to blow up the testing. It's a guy who was very productive in college, who was very good at Ole Miss before transferring to Ohio State, then had the challenge of sharing a backfield with already established Trevion Henderson. It's easy for coaches to say, this guy does this best, this guy does this best, and we'll let them do their thing. So it was nice to see just how explosive Judkins can be athletically. He's going to be very intriguing heading into the NFL draft. The first loser on the list, who you got?
So I'm going to go with someone that didn't work out at the combine, and that's Shedeur Sanders, the quarterback of Colorado that everyone knows at this point, son of Deion Sanders. I think he lost some ground by not working out at the combine and just in general. Sometimes what comes from the combine when you have all those GMs and agents and coaches is you start to get some more clear picture of what the draft's going to look like. And we're starting to get a little more rumblings of maybe Shedeur Sanders isn't that, number one quarterback. Cam Ward is clearly ahead of him. And then we saw Jackson Dart from Mississippi, who for fantasy, I think is a much better option if he gets drafted in the first round than Shedeur Sanders because of his rushing ability. Would really be helpful. He had a really good combine. He threw well. And so I think the gap is closing between Dart and Sanders, and maybe the draft capital is not quite as high for Shedeur Sanders. It only takes one team, but I don't know. It puts some fear, especially as a fantasy quarterback, in Shedeur Sanders from what came out of this combine.
I like to hear that as well. Since draft season unofficially started, it's been Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders as the consensus top two in, an unexciting quarterback class. But for fantasy purposes, I've really liked Jackson Dart better than Sanders all along because of the rushing. A lot more rushing from Dart, negative career rushing from Sanders at Colorado. And that alone, I think, gives a big edge to the Ole Miss quarterback. So we'll keep watching how these two go. I think certainly Dart's going to be at least the second quarterback in our rankings. We'll see if we have some discussion on who winds up number one in this QB class. And I'm also going to be very curious to see how early the quarterbacks go. This is the time of year we're always like, oh, well, this team needs a quarterback and they're picking second, so they have to take whoever the top quarterback is right here. Sometimes the quarterback's just not good enough to be right there. Maybe that's why we're hearing things like the Giants wanting Matthew Stafford and then switching their focus to Aaron Rodgers when they don't get Matthew Stafford. That could be an early signal that the league is also unexcited about these quarterbacks. Maybe none of them go as early as have been projected. Second winner on the list, it seems like a guy who has been rising really over the past couple months incrementally. Who you got, Shane?
And he's one of your guys. I know you've been high on him. Is Jack Bech, the receiver from TCU, did not work out again at the combine, but he did the drills. And I thought he was maybe the best wide receiver in the drills at the combine. Just really sharp routes, great hands, hand-eye coordination. Did really well in the gauntlet drill where you're getting a ton of passes in a straight line. Looked like a technician out there. And I understand why he didn't work out. He's probably not going to run super fast. I had him at a 4.59 as my prediction. Pro Day might be a little bit faster than that, which is fine. I don't think you have to be a blazer when you have those technical skills. And I thought Jack Bech, one of the benefits of the drills of the combine is seeing all these players back to back to back to back doing the exact same thing. I can pretend to be a great film study, but it's really hard to compare. It's not apples to apples, even watching film of players. The combine does that, and you get to see every player running the same route, and Jack Bech was the best on most of those routes. And to me, that is a good indicator of success at the next level.
And that kind of backs up what went on with him at the Senior Bowl, where it's not that people were excited about him going into that, but when they got on the field in workouts, it was like, oh, this guy is at least as good as we thought, if not a little bit better than we thought. And I know what I liked about him is that he right away led LSU in receptions as a freshman with plenty of other noteworthy names on that team. And then impressed in the Senior Bowl, impressed at the combine. And like you said, it makes sense for him not to do the athletic testing. He knows he's probably not going to measure up to the other wide receivers in Indy on that front, but he's like, I'm a really good receiver, so I'll show you that stuff. And then we'll get my testing numbers later on. If you guys want to pass on me, then I'll just catch touchdowns on you. If you like what you're seeing or hearing here, please let us know. I can't speak for Shane on this front, but I got 2 teenage daughters and a son in middle school, so I'm desperate for positive feedback. I could use anything positive that you're willing to throw my way. Subscribe to the show, give us a like and review wherever you're listening. You will be giving me purpose, something I can put in my kids' faces and say, this is why I'm talking downstairs about football. So leave me be. Loser number 2 on this list. Shane, who you got?
I'm going to go with Tez Johnson, the wide receiver out of Oregon. I think all of us were concerned when he weighed in at the Senior Bowl in the mid 150-pound range. And he came in the combine, same, 5'10", 154 pounds. That's a 6th percentile weight of all receivers ever that have worked out. And his 40 time was disappointing. I thought at that weight, like, okay, he's going to at least get in the 4.4s, maybe even have a shot at the 4.3s. He ran a 4.51, which isn't bad in general. But when you're 154 pounds, I mean, you better blaze it. Now, the other workouts were good. He had a 4.15 shuttle, which is 83rd percentile. His 3-cone is 6.65. I mean, Tez Johnson wins off agility and that short-range quickness. So I don't want to overreact, but I think a lot of teams are going to have some thresholds of weight and speed, and Tez Johnson's not going to make that. I think he's going to be on a very limited number of teams' big boards going into the draft, and that can really hurt draft capital if those teams that have you on the board need other positions, don't want to pick you here, think you'll be around for another round. That's my biggest fear of Tez Johnson. If he goes in round 3, I'll feel a lot more comfortable, but it's going to be tough, at least for me, to get over 154 pounds, 4.51.
Yeah, if you are historically small or, thin or whatever for your position in the NFL, you have more to prove than guys who are more traditionally sized. We've seen Devontae Smith and Tank Dell, when healthy, look like they can overcome those sizes. But again, it's something you have to prove. Devontae Smith was awesome, and it continues to be awesome in the league and has even stayed healthy. Tez Johnson needs to show that he's fast enough to outrun guys that could crush him. And he didn't really show us that at the combine. So it's not a killer, but it's certainly a reason to think maybe he's like Tutu Atwell again, who was overdrafted by the Rams and has not really produced so far.
Yeah, I think that's the fear. And he has that production at Oregon. I mean, it's certainly there, but this isn't Devonta Smith and Tank Dell. These are guys that ran in the 4.3s, and you can see that on the field. Tez Johnson not having it. Like you said, he's going to be a historic outlier if he works out. And to me, it's just not worth betting on in rookie drafts when there's other players available that I think have a better chance of succeeding.
Winner number 3 is a guy that Mr. Shane Hallam turned me on to that I have since drafted in best ball lineups. Bhayshul Tuten, tell the world about him, because everybody's starting to learn about him after a huge combine performance.
When our first rookie rankings came out, and I kind of did the order that I had them in, and I looked around after I did that, and I was like, oh, I have Tuten way higher than anyone else. And I think he showed it at the combine. You could see on film the athleticism. He ran a 4.32, fastest running back 40, 1.49, 10-yard split. So he led the entire running back crew down there in the 10-yard split. So you show that explosion right off the get up. 40.5 vertical. That was the top running back score. 10-10 broad, tied for second among running backs. He's just this super athletic 206 pound to 210 pound runner that's tough, has some of that vision, and still has that long speed. I think he has kind of a full repertoire in a one cut system, similar to maybe Isaac Guerendo that we saw, who was super athletic at the combine for the 49ers. Then when he got a shot, had a lot of success in that one cut zone system. Tuten's issue, and we saw it, he did run the shuttle. He ran a 4.41, which is not a great time, is kind of that short area agility. But I think there's going to be a lot of teams that are put off by that he's not someone they want. If you put him in a Shanahan type of system where you don't have to worry about finding the hole and kind of jittering around in the backfield, I think Tuten has a shot to be a really productive running back who can explode for the home run as well as just get to the line very quickly.
Better production than Guerendo brought with him into the combine. Let's just hope that he doesn't actually land with Kyle Shanahan in a crowded backfield and goes somewhere with more available opportunity. But this whole running back group, it looked intriguing heading into the combine, and they delivered on the speed and athletic testing. It looks like we really could get a big reshuffling in the committees, the number 2 running backs in fantasy this year. Like this is a group for everybody to be aware of as they're drafting from now through the rest of the summer.
I wrote it up in my Dynasty Rookie Rankings article on Draft Sharks. We haven't had more than 6 running backs taken in the first 2 days of the NFL draft since 2020, which had 9. And I think this year is going to challenge that. So for rookie drafts, that is a much needed influx of really good running backs into the league.
Final loser is another wide receiver who did not run as fast as we thought he would, as fast as he thought he would, because he was talking it up ahead of the combine. Shane, who we got?
Isaiah Bond, wide receiver out of Texas. And we saw last year him bait Xavier Worthy, saying that Bond was going to run a 4.20. He didn't even get in the 4.2s. He barely got in the 4.3s. He was at 4.39 at 5'10", 5'8", and 180 pounds. Bond was someone going into the season because of his success at Alabama as a receiver. You thought, hey, this guy could be a first-round pick. He's fast, he's athletic. And then it was a disaster year at Texas. He dealt with injuries. He was dropping passes. Ball tracking was off. And now he comes into the combine and runs 0.2 slower than we thought he was going to be. He was outrun by his teammate Matthew Golden, who ran the fastest 40 of 4.29. Like Bond, he's a small, fast receiver, but there's just not a lot to love. And it worries me that he might not even be a top 100 pick.
Yeah, I guess I don't share your worry because I've been not super interested in Isaiah Bond so far. I think I'm just pushing him out of the way, hoping that somebody else drafts him before I want to, which has been the case in redraft so far. This might keep that from being the case, might push him down rookie drafts after the NFL draft. But, we'll see how the rest of the process goes for him and where he lands there. It's alarming when a guy doesn't produce on the field with what seems like above average speed for the position. So, again, we'll see where Isaiah Bond goes, but not a good look for him in Indy. Shane, of course, like I said, goes deep into the tape for all these players. We are also already 7 players deep on our annual Dynasty Value series that previews all of the incoming rookies that you need to know, even if you're not in a Dynasty and only thinking of redraft. There are going to be players in this group that impact your league right away. The latest article finds Kevin English digging into the stats and film on Michigan tight end Colston Loveland, who just might be ready to make an immediate impact in 2025. Certainly an interesting position that we'll talk about more in a few minutes. Speaking of impact, Shane, let's move now to that rookie rankings update that you've referred to, which may or may not have been impacted directly by the testing in Indy. You already updated those rankings on draftsharks.com, so readers can check that out right now to see where everybody sits and who has jumped or fallen along the way. For today, who's the first mover you want to highlight?
The first mover I want to highlight is Jayden Higgins, wide receiver out of Iowa State, who I think has had a really significant movement over time. When we first put out the rankings in early January, he was kind of at the bottom, just barely made it. But 6'4", 214 pounds, a true X receiver, had a really good Senior Bowl, and then went into the combine, 4.47, 39 vert was 92nd percentile. A 92nd percentile broad jump at his size is ridiculous. So he's a player that has now moved up a couple tiers, and then this combine helped kind of put him at the top of the tier he was in. And he's looking like more of a second round rookie pick instead of a 4th round rookie pick in early January.
Yeah, and that size, 6'4". So he heads in with that as an advantage. And if he is also very fast and can also jump really high, that's going to be attractive to NFL teams. Had the college production as well. So we'll dig further into him in his dynasty value profile, but a good looking player that we also learned during our recent winter meetings in Florida as Draft Sharks that Jared's becoming a big fan of Jayden Higgins as well. So look for Jayden Higgins to be featured prominently in our rookie rankings, which he already is. Let's hit a pair of running backs together next. You've got Omarion Hampton and Kaleb Johnson on the list. What is the story with each guy's movement so far?
I think when you look at the combine and how do players move, I think if people significantly move them up or down, it's not great. But what it can do is shift within that tier. One thing I always say about the combine is sometimes it helps confirm kind of the vibes that you feel. I think we all kind of felt Omarion Hampton was the RB2, but it wasn't like guaranteed by any means. And so when he had a great combine, 221 pounds, but still ended up with a 98th, broad, ran in the 4.4s. It was like, okay, this guy not only is RB2, but we got to move him up that tier, and maybe he's a 1st round pick. And then you had players like who we've talked about, Travion Henderson, Quinshon Judkins, moved up within that tier. So I think Hampton moved up to kind of be a clear RB2. And then Caleb Johnson, the running back out of Iowa, didn't do anything wrong. He ran as expected. I thought he'd run a 4.55. He ran a 4.57, 6'1", 224, but he just didn't do anything to really stand out. His footwork and the drills look good. They kind of just moved to the bottom of that tier. Now he's more RB5 than RB2, and that's pushed him down in our rankings to about 12th. So sometimes it's not, a problem with the player, but we learn that other players are also really good. And now what looked like maybe the first 5 or 6 picks in your rookie draft are going to be really good. That first round now looks really sharp in general. If you can get a Caleb Johnson at 10, 11, or 12. So he's a mover down, but not because of necessarily who he is or what he did.
Yeah, and of course, when you say move down to 12th, you mean 12th overall. Certainly not 12th among running backs. We still like Caleb Johnson overall. And we're really splitting hairs among these guys. It sounds funny to talk about stuff like a slightly slower 40 time or not quite standing out in combine drills. And, I don't want to imply that we're overrating those factors here, but it is a matter of splitting hairs between guys like Omarion, Hampton, and Caleb Johnson that sit high in our running back rankings. And at some point, you're going to have to make a decision between those players in a rookie draft. So we really have to look at each of these factors. You can find those full Dynasty value write-ups on both players that I just showed on the screen on draftsharks.com. They've been written up, so you can learn even more about them. I'll include the links to each guy's write-up in the show notes at the bottom of this. Both interesting players, both potentially not only longer term producers for fantasy, but potentially immediate impact players, regardless of one having a better combine than the other. We'll see exactly how the rest of the process treats both of them. Let's go back to receiver now, though, Shane, for a guy that you already mentioned in relation to his teammate. He seemed to build up some late season buzz in college and then has backed that up as we've moved through this process. And then, of course, at the combine with his surprisingly fast time, it's Matthew Golden.
Wide receiver from Texas. As I mentioned before, he ran the fastest 40 time for a receiver at the combine of 4.29, came in at 5'11", 191. But really, I think what Matthew Golden shows is how the new playoff format in college football maybe affects how these kind of prospects ramp up. Because again, January 1st, he was a player. If he came out, I really wasn't sure that he would. Maybe he's a day 2 pick. But he had a great college football playoff. I mean, he beat up on Ohio State. I think that really helped his draft stock ultimately. And then he declared, and then he's athletic and showing that off. So it's been this kind of consistent rise. I think it's something we need to keep in mind that before we could kind of make confirmations on these players in early January, maybe they have 1 game left, but some of them are playing 2, 3, 4 games before we even get to that final point of the offseason.
And 2, 3, 4 games against some of the other best teams in the country. So it's good competition. Matthew Golden, very interesting, was already climbing up redraft boards a little bit. I think he's probably going to climb even higher now. He's going to be one of those guys that goes maybe earlier than he should. We'll see. Enticing at the very least for rookie drafts. Let's close it out with a couple of tight ends. Like I said, a position that looks very interesting for this class. And Mason Taylor and Elijah Arroyo have been making some news and also been guys that you've talked about along the way. Are they both upward movers in these rankings?
Both upward movers. I think when Kevin and I sat down and looked at the rankings, we in general had been a little low on tight end because of how good this class was and some of the uncertainty going in. So we moved up almost every of the top 4. Kevin wrote up Colston Loveland, but Mason Taylor of LSU and Elijah Arroyo of Miami are closing that gap. They both had excellent Senior Bowl performances, which isn't the be-all, end-all. It's an exhibition, it's a week of practice, but it really shows how solid and athletic those players are. And then Taylor didn't work out. Neither of them worked out at the combine, but Taylor did the drills, had maybe the best gauntlet drill that I've seen this season. Really good hand-eye coordination, catching away from his body, rapid fire. He just looks like a really solid 2-way tight end. And Arroyo has that ability to be athletic, be a red zone threat, do kind of a little bit of everything. For me, it's all about draft capital. We're looking at Colston Loveland, Tyler Warren, probably getting drafted in the top 20. Then Mason Taylor and Elijah Arroyo maybe has a shot at the end of the first round, or at least in the top 50. Remember Sam Laporta. Remember how these early second-round tight ends can really pay off in rookie drafts and even in redraft. I think there are 2 names that have been moving up and are for sure worth remembering.
Yeah, and one reaction in what should be a fairly loaded tight end class, versus the norm, you might think I'm just going to wait and grab one, but it can also be, let me take a tight end here if I'm not in love with the next wide receiver or next running back. Then you can get potentially a more elite prospect at tight end, as opposed to settling for just the next guy up at a different position. Of course, we'll get much more into the specifics on those players, those positions, how to handle your rookie draft going forward. You can check out the updated rookie rankings on draftsharks.com. Now that we're getting the testing numbers for all these players, scouting reports, that means we will soon be running our Draft Sharks rookie model created by our in-house engineer, Alex Korf. You will find model scores and much more for every rookie that matters in our second annual rookie guide on the way very soon. You can find all the rookie and dynasty content you need at draftsharks.com. And you'll also find dynasty tools that will help you take these opinions and make all the right moves and turn your team into a perennial contender. Because at Draft Sharks, we're always striving to be your unfair advantage.